Mr. Dixon Jones, bonjour.
Bonjour Laurent, comment allez-vous? Or comment
Well,
vas-tu? I think
I'm
we can
very
say two now, can't we?
yeah, of course, but the English doesn't have this vous and tu.
No, we just say mate.
Yeah. So SEO conspiracies. What do you think of this whole like
So
EAT thing?
I think that EAT, so EAT, expertise, authority, and trust is a. If anyone hasn't read it, it's about 100-page document that Google has that they give as quality guidelines to human beings to try and um, use humans to score the algorithm. So it's kind of so a lot of people are saying expertise, authority, and trust. These guidelines are ranking factors, and that's a myth. That's a myth. They are not ranking factors. They are ways in which they are asking people to judge whether they think that the ranking factors have achieved the outcomes that Google wanted. So I'd say it's well worth reading that. I say it's 100 pages, but it's got lots and lots of screenshots in it, so it actually doesn't take as long as you think to read. But it does give a huge amount of insight into what the algorithms are trying to achieve and what Google is trying to achieve out of the algorithms, and that's why you should take the EAT guidelines very, very seriously, because if you can create a website which, if you gave it to the humans at the far end, would say tick, 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 yes, that's that fits all the boxes that we think are important, then it no longer becomes your responsibility to fix the to manipulate the algorithm. It becomes Google's responsibility to correctly assess your content. So it plays to a win-win, and in SEO terms, a win-win between Google, the user, and the SEO is a rare thing. So the EAT guidelines are a great thing to hang your hat on, even though they are not part of the algorithm per se necessarily.
Oh, I agree. I think it's a consequence of it's the goal of anyone to follow this principle, because basically it's gonna up the game a notch. This is how I present it, and the only difference with the way Google presents it, it's about the A of authority, where the quality raters just deal with the on-page signal. Well, first of all, the quality raters look at the search engine result page as a whole. They gotta rate the quality of the search engine result page. Of course, behind this whole thing, you got pages, but they don't audit the page by itself like a SEO audit. It's more like a quality of the whole thing. You type, I don't know, tree, and then do you have a good quality of result and different intentions and blah, blah, blah. But here's how I say it. The old SEO triptych is content, technical, and links, popularity, right? So what I say is, now, let's be a little more ambitious. E of expertise. Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to publish content. Well, are you an expert in your field? And do you know how to demonstrate this expert? Are you interesting, funny, whatever it is? But if you have like 25 PhD in gardening and you can't explain to me the value of gardening, well, keep your PhDs. So expertise is just the E of EAT allows me to tell my clients, okay, now you got to maybe be a little more ambitious with the content.
Yeah.
A of authority, for me, again, in my opinion, is, are people influent in your industry, including your competition, talking about you? That's a different game than I got to build links, right?
Yep. Yep.
And T of trust is, can we trust the website? Do you protect the user? Is the the experience nice. It's different than is your website optimized for a search engine, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's also something else that you've got to take. You've got to bear in mind. This document was written for individuals around the world, presumably in multiple languages, who are sitting there and being asked 3 questions, or being asked some questions by Google's, system to say, right, here's some stuff, does this do this, does, and the questions can only ask the person answering for them to judge on things that they can see, and they can only see the content on the page. So they're not being asked to go and investigate whether that person was an expert. They're not asking for that. If you can't tell that they're an expert, then they wouldn't ask that question. So I think there's a lot of signals and a lot of bits of the algorithm that can't be judged in that process. So there are other things going on apart from the EAT guidelines that we should still keep, paying attention to. Site speed, for example, probably they don't ask the person about site speed, but
Sure.
Still a very, very important element of ranking, it would appear. So I think there's that going on, and I think your point of trust is also very interesting, or authority and trust and expertise. Well, all 3 of them, particularly in the individual, because a person cannot be an expert at everything. And Bill Gates, I'd say, is an expert in operating systems and is an expert in philanthropy and global causes. He's not an expert on music, and not an expert on tennis. Apparently he's in a tennis club, but I don't think he's an expert on tennis. So you cannot be an expert on everything. And if you are a content writer, be very, very careful not to spread yourself too thin. I think it's important to specialize if you are a content writer, or ghostwrite, because you don't really want to be associated with the stuff that you don't want to be associated with as an individual, because your brand is going to get reflected. If you start talking about too many different things, you're not going to be an expert on anything.
And it gets a lot trickier when, for example, I like the example of diet, right? Because going back to the Google update that supposedly damaged the finance and health websites.
Yep.
Personally, I don't think there was an update just for this type of sites, but because this type of sites have certain key elements, they were hit stronger. For example, are you relevant to speak about a diet because you lost 100 pounds in 7 days, or because you got a PhD in dieting, right? Again, from a robot perspective, from Google, I think Google had to be a little more drastic and take some, because who to believe, and that's important, especially with finance and health.
Yeah,
you can't trust anyone.
Your money or your life terms. Sites. I think there's another thing on this that I kind of always. I'm glad that they've reviewed the no follow policy and brought in UGC and stuff like that. But I think it's kind of interesting, because if somebody writes crap on the internet, let's say somebody says, okay, we found another planet in between Jupiter and Mars, Mars and Jupiter or something, and it's and it's great and stuff like that, and somebody's put that up and it's rubbish, and then Brian Cox, who's a famous physicist here, or astronomist and physicist here in the UK, he comes up and in the comments, dispels the myth and stuff. Who's the authority in this position? The person that's got the user-generated content with the no-followed links to citations and stuff, or the person that wrote the crap in the first place? And I think that's it's not necessarily a good idea that Google has deprecated or had deprecated comments, and if they can now identify the owner of the comments and stuff, then I think that there's a case to be said for following that person around and saying, right, when this person talks about these subjects, then that carries more weight. But I don't know if they're doing that yet.
I think it's definitely one of the goals to be able to put like an ID and value the PageRank of someone, basically.
Of a person, yeah.
Well,
person. topically PageRank.
Yeah,
because you can only be you can't be an expert on everything, you know.
If,
in the same way that a page can't be an expert. So a high PageRank page means nothing without context, which is why topical PageRank became such a, didn't become such a thing. It took a long time for anybody to pay any attention to that.
But we saw the trend before, like 15 years ago. You could have a website talking about pretty much everything, and it could rank on various topics. And little by little, we saw that if you were niched, if you had a website that talked precisely about one thing, it was much better than having a small part of a website talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
it was more powerful.
Yeah,
and I think be specific. Go from the specific to the wide instead of the wide from the specific. But be first very strong in a little thing, and then you can go widen your perspective. But it's very interesting how we saw Google improve on trying to understand who is relevant about a topic, and I think maybe that's the ultimate goal, to be able to tag everyone this famous topical PageRank on individuals.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I don't know how this is going to allow new ideas to emerge. But I don't know whether it'll crush innovation or whether it'll spur innovation. Usually these things spur innovation, but it does strike me that if you've made somebody an expert, maybe the old guard are gonna carry some weight for far too long, and the new blood won't be able to break through quite so easily, because once you become an expert in something, it's going to take a while for the algorithm to forget you when you've suddenly prove that you're not.
Exactly. What about next time? Let's talk about PageRank, right?
Is PageRank dead?
Let's find out. And which PageRank?
Hey, okay, let's do that. All right.
Cheers.
Bye for now.